Hi, Peter Charles here, Hooked for Life Fly Fishing. And so far I've showed 3 welding videos that give us the essentials for building a set of Skagit style sink tips, or Mo tips as some people call them. And I'm going to talk about actually putting them together. Now, I've done the 3 videos. It shows how to do a back end loop, and this is the joint for the floater sinker, and this is the tip loop. So you've got those 3 videos that show you how to do the 3 welds in a Skagit set of tips. So I have my own that I built years ago, and this is a full sinker. And then I have various other ones in here which have different lengths of floating line. So as you can see, this one they're all 10 foot long, and this one is about 7.5 feet of floater, 2.5 feet of sink tip. This one is 50-50. This is 75% sinker, 25% floater, and this one is all sinker. So I've got a lot covered here, and this is a set of T7 tips that I've got here. And I want to talk about the fundamentals behind doing this. So here's your basic problem when you are setting up a set of tips like this, and that's to find a floater section that's heavy enough, because the floater section must be at least as heavy on a grains per foot basis as the sinking material. So in other words, if I'm using T10, which is 10 grains per foot, I need a floater section that's at least 10 grains per foot. All right, so you don't want to have a lighter floater section and a heavier sinking section. You get poor turnover. So it can be the same, or the floater can be heavier, a little bit heavier. That's fine, as long as the floating section is not lighter, because you do not want light trying to turn over heavy. So that's a simple rule. So there is a rule of thumb that more or less works most of the time, and that is double taper lines, generally on a grains per foot basis, equal the rating number. So from about 7 weight to 10 on up, this is generally true. So 7 weight is roughly 7 grains per foot, 8 grains per foot, 9 weight, 9 grains per foot, 10 weight, 10 grains per foot. Yeah, there's a little, they're not exactly that, but they're close enough. Close enough for our purposes. So if you're going to do T7, you could use a 7 weight, probably be a bit safer using an 8 weight double taper line to provide the belly section. And if you were doing T10, you got to use at least a double taper 10 weight to provide the floating section. Now these can be hard to find, but if you go on the Great Auction site in the sky, you probably will find some double taper lines, and you may be able to find 11 and 12, which allow you to get up to a little higher. Getting up to about 14 weight, that gets a little trickier. Now you're into converting old spay lines and that sort of thing, because they're the only lines that have enough belly mass to be able to be equal to or greater than 14 grains per foot for T14, for example. So how do I do that? Well, I have this scale here, electronic scale. It is not sensitive enough to read a fly line. For example, if I put a whole fly line on it, I might be able to get a reading off of it. Let's see if I get it, switch the unit to grams. See, it's not even registering. So the trouble is when using these kinds of scales is to try to find one that's sensitive enough to be able to read that, because it doesn't even read all of that, okay? So that's one problem. Now what I've been doing here is, I'll try and turn this sideways a little bit so you can see it without having it fall apart. This is a kind of scale that is used by people who want to load their own ammunition, their own shotgun shells. And it's a grain weight scale. It measures in grains. It's a little fiddly to use for lines, but it works, and it's very sensitive. It will actually read right down to a single grain. So this is what I have been using to do my weighing of lines. But as I say, if you're sticking with T10 and less, you can get away with just using double taper lines and following the line weight numbers. That's close enough. If you go above T10 and you can't find double taper lines heavy enough, then you've got to use spay bellies, and then you've got to start finding a way to weigh them. And the other thing is you always want the level section of the line, not the taper. So one approach would be to, find where the taper ends, and you can usually feel that. Cut that section out so you've got a full belly section. See if you've got a scale that will weigh it, and then divide the length by the weight, and you get the grains per foot. It's probably the only way to do it. But if you want to stay T10 and lighter, you can just go with the double taper. So again, you're up to you how you approach this in terms of the proportions and the lengths. But what we're aiming for is all of our tips should be the same length, and they should all be roughly the same weight. So when you're casting, it doesn't really change your casting all that much. As you move from, let's say, the one with the least amount of sinker to the one that's all sinker, it really shouldn't change your casting all that much because they all weigh the same. So that's how we put our tip sections together for Skagit, Mo-tips as some people call them. Just remember, you've got these 3 joints that we've shown you how to do, and all you have to do is combine this into a set of tips, and you can have something like this. And you can, the beauty of doing your own is you can do your own lengths, your own proportions, whatever you want to do. It gives you the creativity to set this up the way you want. So if you want to do a 15-foot set, and I have a 15-foot set, yeah, you can. There's lots of ways around it. So lots of approaches you can use. So it gives you, and you can all go lighter. The other thing is, nobody makes a trout set like this. We say with 5-weight lines, a 5-weight sinker, and done on with a 5-weight floater or a 6-weight double taper floater. Lots of those around. You could do your own set of tips in a trout weight, a trout size. These are the things you can think about and the options you have going forward. Anyway, there we go. That's the wrap up on how to put your sink tips together. Cheers.
Fish. Good one.